Hi guys, I'm Ebony and I'm going to be speaking about what is political correctness. Thank you. So, political correctness is defined as the conformity to prevailing liberal or radical opinion, in particular by carefully avoiding forms of expression or action that are perceived to exclude, marginalise or insult groups of people who are socially disadvantaged or discriminate against. The term was used as early as 1917 following the Russian Revolution. It was used to question the Soviet Union's Communist Party's policies and principles. Over the recent years, I think that political correctness has grown to become something that is much more relevant and expected in society, and if you don't conform to this, you are likely to be criticised or punished for it, rightfully so. For previous generations, being politically incorrect was the norm and wasn't challenged as often. And I find that older generations that are still alive today often use this as an excuse to say controversial and offensive things that would cause upset and harm to people. However, I believe that this is a very poor excuse, as they have managed just fine to adjust and adapt to other ideas such as technology and other modern world things. And as I said before, as it is an old term that was used in 1917, so they should have adjusted by now. Next slide, please. There are aspects to political correctness that are, as a whole, agreed as being completely unacceptable, such as using slurs and being blatantly prejudiced to people, except from the few sad people that don't agree with that. However, as society progresses, there have become more things that are deemed as politically incorrect. This comes into how cancel culture has become so prevalent, as there is so much more awareness of what is deemed as the right and wrong thing to say. I do think this is useful in many examples, as it's very important to hold people accountable. However, I find that more and more for example, social media influencers, especially I find young women or girls, people find things to nitpick at and find things that aren't necessarily deemed as offensive, but they just want to kind of target and cancel them for no reason at all, especially if you are part of these marginalised groups. Social media does play a huge role in this, as I previously said, as it's easy to share things that people have done or said that could be deemed as cancel-worthy, and people can also be portrayed in different lights on social media and be deemed in a way that isn't true to who they are. Although social media can have such a positive impact as well, as it means that people are able to educate and enlighten about topics that are still so important today, and give them a different perspective on topics that they might not know much about and that are so important to people, and it educates them on things that they might not seem as harmful but are so effective to people and how they live their lives in general. Although political correctness can be a very good and enlightening thing, when people take it to an extreme and specifically look for things to criticise about what someone has said or done, then this is when it can become performative activism, and it can actually be unhelpful. Situations like this can also lead to people, such as Piers Morgan, who has been previously mentioned, using it as an excuse to say that people who actually want a peaceful society for people to live in, he can accuse them of being crazy and ridiculous. In a 2021 survey, it was found that 62% of the British public agree with the statement, political correctness has gone too far. However, the majority of people who took this survey were conservatives, so it isn't necessarily representative of Britain as a whole. As we know, conservatives have very narrow minds and they like to control people in their own way. Next slide, please, thank you. So how does political correctness link to a series of public apologies? So obviously the themes of the play are very political, and the act that was committed by the fourth speaker is seen as unacceptable, although they say that it was an act of protest. We also see lots of hashtags being created, such as hashtag Allen Lives Matter. Hashtags are often used to spread news and educate people about political matters. However, they can also be used to ridicule political movements. This particular hashtag reminded me of when the Black Lives Matter protests were very prevalent in 2020. As this is such a huge matter, there were clearly people who disagreed with it. So some people at the time used this to create the hashtag All Lives Matter. This reminded me of this moment in the play, as there are unfortunately always people who try and make a mockery out of something when it's something that is such a big matter that needs to be spread awareness about. In Act 4, Scene 3, the fourth speaker is being interviewed, and the interviewer states that what's happening is a witch hunt. I feel that this is how cancel culture can sometimes be perceived by people, especially those who intend to be politically incorrect most of the time. Next slide, please. Thank you. So, how can I take this research into the rehearsal space? Working on a piece that sparks so many ideas that people are passionate about is such a fun and enlightening thing, to be able to do. However, it's so important that we're mindful of what we say and are aware that there will be slightly differing opinions on lots of different topics, not just the political ones. Having this mindset will make it so much easier and enjoyable to put all of your ideas forward. And I also think that when people share an idea that people might not necessarily agree with, it's really important that you don't just come full force at them, as we're all people who are growing and learning every day. So if you just take that time to educate someone, it'll be so much more effective than if you come at them harshly. But obviously if they're trying to be offensive and harmful, then you have every right to criticise what they're doing. Thank you.
And then, so how can we use it in the actual play, in exploring political correctness in the play, in rehearsal perhaps?
Well, like I mentioned, like there's a section in the play where it's a bunch of
Tell me.
Sorry. There's like a section where it's just a bunch of hashtags, and one of them is hashtag Alan's agenda, which obviously people like Piers Morgan, he said, "Oh, I identify as a penguin."
Yeah.
I think like people take things that are serious, such as trans people and things like that, and take it as a way to ridicule. So I think we can play on that and play on the satire of it in the play and how this affects people in everyday life in a serious matter.
Okay.